y'all? So welcome back to another episode. So this is what I got for y'all today. So I don't think I ever showed this on either like any of my social media or even in another video or anything like that, but probably a few months back I went out to the junkyard to get a B18B from the junkyard. There was an Integra that went into the junkyard. Problem is, when I got out to the Integra, it had a good motor in it, but it was a B20, and at the moment I had an overabundance of B20s. I did go back recently, try to get it, but the car had already been there for like 2 months or whatever. So even though it's like a less frequently visited junkyard, I mean, it was a matter of time before somebody went and basically got it. So I remember a buddy told me that there was a DA that went in there and that the motor was still in there. So I was like, well, I'd rather have a B18. So let's go see if this B18A is there. And if it is, I'll pull it, because I was already at the junkyard looking to get a motor, and I had all my tools and everything, and I didn't want to leave empty-handed. So here it is, B18A out of I believe it was like a 1992 or 91 Integra. So it wasn't the Obity one. So it had all the like all the OBDO plugs and stuff like that on it. But regardless of the fact, the motor is the same exact thing. So what I plan on doing with this motor, because it was really clean and everything was in really good working order, I'm pretty sure that the car went in there for the transmission, because the motor was flawless when I spun it there. If it spun flawlessly. I'm gonna go ahead and muscle this thing out of the trunk. The only reason that I took it apart is because I was at the junkyard by myself. So to heave this thing all the way to the front and throw it in the trunk of the car, it had to be like this. But so I'm gonna move this thing to the backyard, and we're gonna start disassembling the block, so we can go ahead and see what all we need. I've already went ahead and ordered like bearings, rings, basically everything to redo the block. And I'm considering whether I'm going to fully build this head. I want to build a full A1, and I'm going to put it in my car, and we're going to have some fun with it. And eventually I'm either going to post it up for sale, or I might do a vtec conversion and see how far we can push this thing. But eventually the goal is going to be to sell it, because this isn't going to be like the actual like end all be all motor that I want to build for this car. I got other plans. So for now, probably throughout this next year, we're just going to go ahead and start off with this. Going to do everything that we can from this, improve it as much as we can, and then eventually I'll go ahead and post it up for sale, and one of you guys or somebody that's local or whatever can either buy it off me, or even if you're out of state or whatever, I work at a warehouse where it's pretty easy to get stuff shipped out. So, you know, if the buyer pays the shipping or whatever, I'll ship it out. But so let's get this thing into the backyard and start tearing into it. Yeah, so now that we got this thing in the backyard here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and start stripping down the short block here. All right, disassembling the front of the motor. So tighten the belt tensioner, save that little spring. Yeah, we hear that. I don't know if the camera catches that, but if it does, that raspiness, that's no good. You gotta put a new one. Luckily I got a bunch of them. Water pump. Yeah, look at that. Super clean, still really stiff. Water passages are immaculate. Alright, for the flywheel, or in this case flex plate, because it's auto, make sure you have a 17 12 point. I like to change these out to ARPs because they end up changing to 19 12 point, and you end up getting a lot more of like surface on the end, so you don't round these off. With these, you got to make sure you're completely flat, or you will round them off. So like that. The next part is going to be super tedious. You're basically just going to take off every single bolt from the oil pan, which is a size 10, and I don't think you guys want to watch me do that, so I'm just going to fast forward through it. And the oil pan's off. And we're going to go ahead and remove the oil pickup tube and the wind dish tray. One of the things that I like, that I just realized, is that I'm noticing that in the oil pan there isn't like any metal shards or anything, so that's cool. It looks like they did go oversized. Somebody stripped out the drain plug at one point. Luckily we're not using this oil pan, so it doesn't matter. But it does have an OEM gasket, and there are not any metal shards in there. Those little specks that you see at the bottom there, they're not metal shards. Those are like dirt and stuff from when they punched a hole in the oil pan right there. But other than that, the motor itself is super clean. No issue with any rod bearings or anything, at least as far as I can tell. It was spinning real smooth at the junkyard, so once I get this wind dish tray, we'll double check and see if there's any play on the bearings. Wind dish tray is off. Now we can go ahead and start checking the crankshaft to see if it's got any play. Unfortunately, my 1/2 inch wrench broke, so I don't have anything to throw this socket on here. So what I'm gonna have to do is let's see, where did the crank bolt go? On the crank bolt. So I'm just gonna put the crank bolt on here, and then with the 19 wrench, I'll go ahead and turn the motor. Today I'm kind of in a hurry, so I'm just doing it like this. This one doesn't really have much play. It does have some play, and so does this one. So that tells me that the bearings are worn down a bit, but not to the point where they were knocking. This one, same thing. So they all have a little bit of play, but not to where they're knocking. Just a little side to side play. So motor actually spins really good. You don't hear anything knocking as I go back and forth, so that's good. taking off these rod cap bolts. You might freak out a little bit at what I'm about to do, but keep in mind, I'm not reusing any of this. It's going to be getting all brand new rods, ARP rod bolts. Pretty much everything going in is brand new. None of the original stuff is going back in. So, here we have the first main cap. I don't know if this is original or not, but it doesn't look original. Either this was a really healthy motor or this was rebuilt at some point. That's one bearing, cylinder 1. This one was pretty bad. This one came off the cap here. There was no scoring on the crank or anything though, so that's good. Number two looks good. Number three looks good. So number 4 was the only one that was a little loose. It doesn't look that bad on the inside, but it definitely disconnected way too easily from the bearing. So I feel like it was just time for this motor to get gone through. But I'm gonna put these here so I don't lose the order of them, because we can always reuse these rods and pistons for another build. So I want to keep the caps to their corresponding rods. I'm just going to give this a quick lift. Actually, what I could do, take off the rear and the front, pull the crank out, and I can slide the pistons down afterwards. Alright, so unfortunately, I had to run away real quick. Now that I'm back, we've lost our daylight. So I think I said that I was gonna undo the rod caps next, or not the rod caps. The rod caps are already on the ground. The main caps. So we're gonna go ahead and pop off these main caps, get this crank ready to come out. The oil pump is already unbolted from this side. Actually, what I should do, unbolt the rear main seal housing here. Get that loose and ready to go. Alright, so that's all loose and ready to go. Yeah, all the bolts are removed from the oil pump. I'm not really worried about where the majority of these bolts are going. I'm gonna pick them all up and put them away here. And I've done this so many times, I kind of remember exactly where all these bolts go, so I'm not too worried about it. Now we are going to reuse all these housings, so I gotta be careful not to destroy these. The oil pump, I don't care, because we're gonna be running an aftermarket oil pump. I'm not too worried if the oil pump gets chipped or damaged. But there's no reason to go crazy and lose this rear main seal housing. Yeah, that's got the original sealant on there. I wish I would have looked inside of the DA that this came out of so I could have seen the mileage. Yeah, it does have the little seal wear there, so I'm gonna estimate it's probably got around 130, 140,000. And let me see. This is actually, if you notice the green and then you notice right here, that little emblem. So this is actually an OEM rear main seal. Alrighty, let's see if I can take this off without it hurting too bad since I don't have an engine stand. Alright, so there's like no other way to take this thing out, so I'm gonna use this broken breaker bar. It looks like it grips, it might grip just enough on the socket. Let's see if I can get this to work. Alright, so the last, the crank sprocket is finally out. I didn't take it out in the most humane manner, but it doesn't matter because we're not using that oil pump again. So oil sprocket's out, or the crank sprocket's out. That's all I care about. So that's stud. I get it, this is gonna look kind of wild to y'all. A lot of people are gonna look at me and be like, oh man, this guy's just tearing this, just going ham on this engine block on the ground instead of using an engine stand. But I'm just trying to get it taken apart quickly. I don't have an engine stand here at the moment. All my engine stands are out and about. Places where I got other projects going on. I got a piece of cardboard down so the surface of the block doesn't get hurt, and it's gonna get decked anyways. So I don't know. Normally I keep all my stuff in a storage unit. I don't want to keep this out here in the backyard, especially in Florida. You never know when it's gonna rain and stuff out here, and your stuff get damaged. So I just wanted to go ahead and knock it out, get everything into pieces, so I can go ahead and box that all up and put it inside and get it ready to head to the machine shop. Not too worried about these. I'm gonna keep these bolts and stuff in storage for other motors and whatnot, but these caps and these bolts are never gonna go back in this motor again either. It's gonna be all brand new ARP hardware, and it's gonna be a some type of girdle aftermarket assembly for this. So those aren't gonna be back in here again. Either an OEM GSR girdle setup or an aftermarket. We'll see. We'll see where we're at when the time comes and what we're able to get. With this, you don't want to go too crazy, just light taps, because these have dowels in them. You don't want to damage the dowels or cause any damage to the block. Down at the bottom, usually once it comes loose like that, you can just start wiggling and it'll come right out. careful not to hit the crank. I was being a little stubborn. Be patient with it. Work it out. It'll come out. There you go. Cool. Alright. That one had a little something get caught in the bearing there. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but there's a little line there. Something went inside the bearing. No damage to the crank though. Crank looks perfect. This one's starting to get a little wear there. Let's see. This one looked pretty perfect, just a little bit of heat wear. That's normal. This one had something get caught in it too, leave a groove. My nail actually gets caught in that, but crank has no scoring. And that one's perfect too, just normal wear and tear right there. That's about it. Oh boy. Okay, so in case you're wondering, these are all numbered. They have different numbers, so number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and then you have an arrow that points towards the back of the motor, so you don't have to worry about keeping them in order or anything. Just keep the set together. As far as the crank goes, we don't have any damage on the crank anywhere. Everything looks pretty good. A small little line right there, but nothing crazy. Nothing that the finger catches. All of this looks pretty decent. There's a noticeable line there, but my finger doesn't catch it either. So I'd say the crank is good. I'll probably send it to the machine shop just to make sure it's balanced and good, because we are going to be pushing quite a bit of power through this motor. But overall, it's a great crank to start off with. So I'll let the machinist tell me what he advises, but I'm pretty sure we'll be good. All right, so pull the crank out. Yeah. Motor's actually relatively clean. There's not a lot of browning and stuff like that in the cylinders. So, see what the condition of these rings are. So you can look here. See that on the camera? There we go. There's a little rust buildup, but you see how these rings are still springy? That means that the rings were still holding compression. As far as the O-rings go, they look like they were collapsed. So this thing was probably getting a little bit of blow by. This is cylinder 4 here. Let's see. Cylinder 3, same thing. We got springy compression rings. The O-rings actually don't look that bad on this one, but they did have a lot of carbon buildup, which could prevent them from sealing correctly. Do the same thing here. Yeah, same thing on number 1 too. Number 1, yeah, those O-rings were completely collapsed. So yeah, this motor was due for an overhaul regardless of the fact. Oh boy. But yeah, so that's basically it. That's how you tear down a B18 Honda motor. And I say that like that's the first one on the internet. It's not. There's a bunch of them out here, or there's a bunch of videos up online and stuff like that. But like I always say, I mean, one more video doesn't hurt. I watch the same stuff that I know how to do and I've done for years. I'll watch, Young Static. I'll watch Honda Street Garage. I'll watch all these guys do all this same stuff that I'm really familiar with and I know how to do and I've done for years, because every single time I watch one of those videos, I pick up a new tip and I find a way to either make my progress more efficient or faster, or I just find a better technique overall that I end up adapting and using. So it never hurts to put one more video of this stuff out in circulation. And not to mention, it's not the exact same process, but a lot of you guys that are messing with K-Series, it's a very similar process. Your head studs and everything will come out the same. The only thing is the K-Series has that upper portion that you have to unbolt with all the rockers and everything. Once you take that off, you expose the head bolts, you pull that off. When you take apart the block on a K-Series, the B-Series have individual main caps. For the K-Series, you end up with one complete, I guess you could call it an upper oil pan. It's basically a complete one-piece girdle. So you undo that, pop that off. It's all the same process. Obviously torque specs, ring gaps, stuff like that, all the essential stuff. The best thing to do is, and what I like to do, is have like a Haynes book or a Helms manual, or if you have the Honda manual handy when you put these together. Don't go on forums, don't go online, don't ask people for specs, because there are a lot of different specs, even for the B-Series. If you're torquing down a GSR motor, the specs are going to be the specs for the main caps are going to be 10 pounds lighter than the B-Series. Ask me how I found that out. I put a B20 together one time with a GSR girdle, torqued it to the LS specs when it was supposed to be torqued to the GSR specs. I wasn't thinking at the moment, and the motor only lasted me maybe about a month before it started smoking. It cooked the bearings, it cooked the main bearings, it cooked the rod bearings, and it killed the pistons because of how much friction the motor was creating. So make sure you get yourself a book, make sure you pay attention, you follow all the specs, and as long as you do that, ABC 1 2 3, you should have a fairly reliable, fairly well built motor. Obviously, when you go into aftermarket applications like we're going to be doing here, we're going to be using Hastings rings, we're going to be using a combination of different King or ACL bearings. The specs are going to change a little bit, so you will need to get with the manufacturers and go on their websites and get those specs. But for OEM, it's pretty simple. Just follow the owner's manual, follow the Haynes manual, and you should be golden. So that's going to be it. We have the block all torn apart. The head I'm not really going to do anything with at the moment. The only thing I'm really going to do is just take off the intake manifold. But for that, I would rather just keep it like that. It's easier to move it in one piece. When it goes to the machine shop, I'll go ahead and take the intake manifold off, so that way they can take just the head and they can go ahead and replace the valve seals, and they can put new valves in it. They're going to cut it. It's going to get dual springs. It's going to get the works. And this is going to be a complete, if I didn't say it already, a complete B18 A1 motor that I'm going to put into my DC Integra. A lot of you might be asking, why would you do that? I don't know the answer myself. I just simply found the whole original motor in a DA. It was in really good condition, and I want to build it. I want to keep it together, put it in the car, and I want to boost it, make some jam with it, and then either sell it, or who knows, we might do a VTEC head conversion eventually. For now, it's just going to be a build for the memes, a build to have fun. Make sure you guys like, make sure you comment if you have any questions or anything below. Make sure you share this video with your friends. It'll help me out. And make sure you subscribe to follow the progress on this build and another build that I'm going to be starting here in another 2 weeks. So that's it, guys. Take it easy. Catch you on the next one.